Buddy, it's Wes Hagen. It is 4/20/2020. It's a lot of 20s. I am the winemaker and winemaker for J. Wilkes Wines and the brand ambassador for the Miller Family Wine Company. I welcome all of you out here yet again. Here we go. I want to make sure that I see all my comments. I do want to see exactly what's going on. As we normally do here, we hang out at least Monday through Friday. From 5 o'clock to about 6 o'clock officially, and I get on usually 45 minutes. Don Ward, John, good to have back. Kevin Jones, Liquid Asset Sellers, North Hollywood, what's happening? Yeah, so I'm trying a new producer software. I don't know if it's going to improve anything, but we'll certainly check. Looks like Martin and Nancy's here, and Don. It's good to see your icon, if nothing else. So, what are we doing today? Well, we are going to be talking about a number of things. We are going to be talking about Pinot Blanc a little bit, its relationship with Melon de Bourgogne, as well as where it's grown, kind of a little bit about Pinot Blanc. We talked a little bit about Pinot Blanc earlier. We're going to really just taste the brand new, and when I mean brand new, it was out of quality control like 3 days ago. Friday, it was released from a 30-day bottling hold. We're going to taste online in front of you, for the first time ever, the 2019 Pinot Blanc, which will be coming out later this year as soon as all you wonderful people drink up all the 2018, which is we're running out of, which is good. We're glad we have the 2019 ready to rock. Nice, yes. You because you guys here early, you get to see what my wife said was the great outfit. So I got the pajama pants on because it's still 68 degrees outside, as it will probably all the way through August. It sort of matches, but these are basically my pants that I wear as I jog around and walk around the neighborhood. So everyone knows to stay 6 feet away from me. I am absolutely healthy thus far, besides a non-functioning pancreas, but I'm pretty much used to that. And like always here on Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, I always want to know where you are, what you're drinking. So as you guys come on, I've got myself a delicious gin and tonic, little Sapphire and some Schweppes, just to be, I will not, and here's the thing I wanted to mention, and I might mention this again. Welcome to Day Drinking. That feels good. It's what I needed right now. Did you do before this whole pandemic that set you up to be more successful in this pandemic? A couple things that my wife and I have been discussing is, how weird is it that some of these doomsday preppers were actually more prepared for what was going to happen than us? Love to hear what it is that you guys have done previously to this that is paying off. And I'll share a couple little stories with you guys. One is that my wife and I decided to breed Hoover hogs. We decided to breed California giant rabbits for meat. I actually love to eat rabbit. Rabbit is actually one of my favorite proteins. Love duck, love rabbit. I think it makes a absolutely fantastic roasted, like a half a roasted chicken with some fries, is a classic dish in Italy. When I was in Italy, that that media coneglio or whatever they called it, with just a nice roasted rabbit is delicious. We actually breed rabbits for dog food. Our dogs, as if you were here on Saturday, we hung out and talked about dogs. Yes, we were watching and all that wonderful stuff. So we got some bourbon, we got some English degrees lend themselves to the brown stuff. Certainly they do. I have a great love for brown liquor myself. So we're breeding these rabbits, and the most amazing thing is you can get a 10-pound rabbit in 70 days from the litter to culling. My wife will be doing the little bolt gun. I will be doing the slaughtering. Well, she'll do the slaughtering and I'll do the butchering. And I'd say maybe 1 out of 5 rabbits I plan to eat because it just sounds delicious. So we're going to do 2 things tonight. We are going to be talking about the 2019 Pinot Blanc, which is a brand new wine that I had never actually tasted in its final blended form. We're going to be talking about why there's 0.2% Chardonnay. We're going to be talking about Mute. which is maybe a term you haven't heard before. And I'll be telling you about mute, which is the proper way to back sweeten a wine to perfection. And then, and I will write down mute to make sure I remember. And then we're going to talk about the process of making white wine, start to finish. So all within maybe 40, 50 minutes, depending on how verbose I am today, we will be doing that. So we've got Gaithersburg, Maryland with some 18 Smashberry Red. Love it. Phil is in the house. The other Phil's in the house. Peter Rogers, the Honorable Peter Rogers, both for his photographs and his mayorship of the beautiful town, the incredibly long, skinny town of Chino Hills. Phil Carpenter, dude, so nice to have you here, brother. I've got a Pliny in my fridge for you. In fact, I got Alvarado Street. Here's another thing. So we're talking about, oh, what's up, Cooking Hour? I hope everything's good, man. Tell your beautiful daughter I said hello. And we got Allison's in the house, and John, and Jason. Jason Villalobos, who is our tasting room manager at Bien Nacido in Solomon Hills. Just watched the 6 seasons of The Walking Dead. That's fantastic. Tracy Dahl's in the house. Beth Ladd. Hello, Beth. I hope everything is well. I do stalk you gently and kindly and with a happy attitude once in a while to see your wonderful family. Beth, so good to see you. And Marsh is here and Robin's here. Yes, Chris Sawyer gave me a 420. I did not get proper clearance to, I was considering basically overdosing myself on edibles at the beginning of the show. And so you guys could basically watch them settle in and watch my face basically melt off my face. But you know me, I'm a team player. And that if there is any celebration, to be perfectly frank, I'm really not smoking right now, just because of the fact that I'm immunosuppressed as a type 1 diabetic. And if I get the COVID, my chances of having serious complications go up almost to 10 to 11%, as well as I've been a smoker on and off my whole life, and my lungs probably are a little crunchy and crispy anyways. So we're basically working out, getting some good cardio in, and doing everything we can to make sure our bodies are super, super healthy. So that generally means that smoking's out. So absolutely. Kevin Jones saved a bunch of cleaning and repairs to do around the house for a month, just in case this situation ever came up. That is pretty much an epic way of describing it. The thing that I did, number one, we're breeding meat. So even I've been hearing that the meat supply chain might be a little screwy. So we will have, as long as we maintain the ability to go pick grass and to have pellets for our and basically all of our leftover green materials in our fridge. We always give them a little bit of this, a little bit of that. These are like really, really incredibly healthy, well-fed rabbits. And we will be getting about 12 about every 2 months, probably. And the gestation period of a rabbit is 30 days. We do have these, our stud, his name is Lore. He's named after the rock creature in the Dark Crystal, the new Dark Crystal series, which if you haven't seen on Netflix is fantastic. We thought it was actually better than the original movie, and we did not think we would say that. It was done with such love and respect for one of our favorite films of all time. Now we're waiting for Labyrinth to come back because Jennifer Connelly could still totally pull it off. I won't get into Jennifer Connelly because I'll get in trouble with my wife. Anyways, so we're going to be talking about Pinot Blanc. We're going to be talking about how to make white wine. We're going to be kind of going off the cuff a little bit, talking a little bit about what we're doing to keep ourselves sane. I'm asking yourself, what had you done before this whole situation that now looking back? I had a full beer fridge from travel and from collecting. I don't have a full beer fridge anymore, but I still have plenty of beer that I can still do. And Eric and Jeff, welcome. We've got, and Michelle, of course, so nice to have you. And Dominic, well, it wouldn't be day drinking without you. So whatever you're drinking, cheers. You can always try to choose a phrase that I use more often than not. Maybe malolactic or J. Wilkes or brand ambassador, and you can drink every time I say it. So I'll do whatever I can to make sure I say all those things as many times as I can. That's a nice, refreshing drink. The official drink of imperialism, the gin and tonic, keeping us safe. and basically indigenous societies wrecked for the last 300 years. Yay us. So here we go. It's about 3 minutes until we start drinking Pinot Blanc. I'm also going to be sharing with the public for the first time anyone's seen the new J. Wilkes label outside of the organization. So I will be sharing that publicly for the first time ever. And Doug Humphrey's in the house. Matthew, welcome. Really glad you guys are all here. So I'm asking you guys to help me sort of kind of talk and crowdsource some information that I'm really, really interested in. The first thing I'm asking you guys where you are and what you're drinking. That's not really crowdsourcing, well, except for my own edification and for me to understand where you guys are and what you're doing. And then I also really, really want to know what it is that you did by mistake that ended up really helping you through this. And I'm going to go ahead and throw out there that about 2 years ago, I planted a lime tree. And honestly, the first ripe lime I had was 2 weeks ago when I decided to start having a nightly gin and tonic with my wife. And you know what? We do not order limes anymore. We've got 2 trees in big pots, and they're both holding about 20 limes each right now. It's going to take a little while until those limes are ready to rock. But the fact that I have limes and that I could make a proper 3-ingredient margarita, not including the rim, that doesn't count as ingredients, but margarita should have 3 ingredients: lime juice, white tequila, and either a splash of Cointreau, or my favorite is a very small splash of Saint Germain, especially if it's super high-end tequila. If it's an anejo or reposado, or not even called that, if it's just a drinking tequila, for my regular pours, I'll do something like Altos or Hornitos or Correlejos or one of those tequilas. But if I'm doing something like Casa Dragones, or I'm doing something like Fortaleza or Ocho, or really good silver tequila, I would actually use a little bit of the Saint Germain, because I found the elderflower liquor actually does a little bit better of a job in my world of respecting the gentle and delicious character of super high-end tequila. And to be perfectly frank, I don't blend high-end tequila very often, even to a really great margarita, except very, very rarely, once a year, maybe making a Casa Dragones margarita for a special occasion. But I generally like to drink my liquor neat when it's good. We've got 4:59. I'm going to run and get, I've got it right here. I'm just a little low on my blood sugar. And last thing you guys want to see me is fall off my seat. It's 5 o'clock. I normally don't eat on camera, but it's better than passing out. Almost there. All right. Yep. Got the Grateful Dead in the back. For Steve Arrowwood, who, if you didn't hear, the winemaker and progenitor of all things Montemar in Lompoc, California, Santa Rita Hills, passed away from a private battle with cancer later last week. And he and I shared a great love for all things Jerry Garcia, Grateful Dead. He kept going to all the shows after Jerry passed. I did not. And so we'd always have conversations about all the stuff that I was missing out. I do still love the band quite a bit and would love to go see them in their last iteration. I think the last time I saw the leftovers of the band was for Phil West's 60th birthday, which was maybe 15, 16 years ago, probably, in the Oakland Coliseum, which was fantastic, and got to go to the after party and meet Phil. And Chanda actually stepped next to Phil Lesh and said, "Phil, can I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure." "Can I touch you?" She said, "Sure." So literally Chanda went, like that, and she giggled, and it was really, really freaking cute. Phil Lesh is the bassist And the sort of master musician that kept the Grateful Dead together. He was a Berklee School of Music guy and an amazing, amazing dude. Little 420 lore for you, talking about Grateful Dead. All right, back to a nice big sip of this, and then let's launch into Pinot Blanc. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. My name is Wes Hagen. Welcome to Day Drinking. What we do on the program is we taste a wine every night, generally within the portfolio of Miller Family Wine Company until, unless this goes on long enough, then I'll just start breaking out other wines from my cellar and we'll start talking about everything else. So we've got some, normally when I'll do the wine thing and then I'll take a break, we'll chat a little bit, and then I'll launch into another little mini lesson. So the mini lesson tonight is the production of white wine. I want to go from the very end of the farming of white wine all the way to bottling and describe all the processes in between and how they would change, say, between a aromatic white wine that's made without oak, such as Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, maybe Muscat, maybe Riesling, Gewürztraminer, wines that are generally not barreled down. And then we'll talk a little bit about barrel fermentation, Chardonnay, and how barrel fermentation and malolactic fermentation, what it is, how it works, how it impacts the wine, and then really what to expect and how fermentation and aging is going to permanently impact the wine and the character of it. We'll also talk a little bit about when to pick, ripeness, and all that stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. And here we go. All right. So as I mentioned, so this is the 2018 label of J. Wilkes. You guys have to see it backwards on my Facebook page. Remember, at Wes Hagen Facebook, you can always go over to J. Wilkes Wine Santa Barbara, and that will give you a better picture. Okay, so you kind of see where the vintage is, the label, the writing. There's a tiny little bit of like a blue coloration to the label. We call that a call out. Santa Maria Valley traditionally was a blue call out on the J. Wilkes label, barely noticeable. Paso Robles is a red call out. And when we make Santa Rita Hills, and we'll be tasting a Santa Rita Hills Pinot Noir next week, you will notice a slight green call out. So 3 AVAs represented in the J. Wilkes brand. So J. Wilkes is an appellated brand, which means we only make wines that are designated by a vineyard, by an American viticultural area. So you're going to see Paso Robles Highlands District, which generally means it comes from our French Camp Vineyard, 1,400 acres south of Shandon, east of Creston. You're going to see Santa Maria Valley, which is generally going to be from the estate vineyards owned by the Miller Family Wine Company, which is going to be Bien Nacido, Solomon Hills, but also some advantageous buys at other vineyards such as Gary's, Sierra Madre, and really wherever we can find the best fruit for a really good price to make sure you guys get the best value. We're looking to make wines that punch in a period where everyone's fighting for your business because, we're a little bit worried about the economy. So I want to make sure that you guys have the ability to get great wines for a great price and really have wines that are expressive and beautiful. All right. So let's go ahead and show you guys the new Pinot Blanc label. For some reason, I've got kind of an error on. Can someone tell me? Oh, it's the Bushmans and Zinman. I normally don't do this, but Eve or Michelle or Phil, anyone who's watching on the J. Wilkes Santa Barbara Facebook page, can you tell me if you can still hear me? Because it says it's having trouble playing this video. I just want to make sure that I am still up. And I apologize. Okay, cool. You can hear me. Can you see me? Oh, cool. No worries. Then I don't even have to watch my face talking to myself. Although looking to see where the label is. Now I'm going to assume that this is probably pretty good for you guys. This is the brand new package. Notice that the vintage is on the upper right hand corner. A little bit more kind of up in, we kept the leaf design, which Chanda and I really, really like. And we really wanted to make sure that leaf design came. And then we took away the call out. We put a silver lining, because there should be a silver lining on everything, silver lining around the label, if you can see it. And then you can also see that on the back, J. Wilkes has been basically put into silver embossed. We've got the SIP certification. We've got Jeff Wilkes' signature, my signature, little story, and all that good stuff. And then, of course, maybe the first time you've seen a 2019 on a label, except if you've been drinking rosé. So why is this wine already open? This wine is already open because I got to take tasting notes on it today. And as a result, I have this beautiful open bottle of unreleased 2019 Pinot Blanc. It's not available yet. I'm totally teasing you and being a jerk about it. But this one was so extraordinary, and it had so much going on as far as what I could teach you guys about Pinot Blanc, that as I tasted it today, I changed the entire week's plan and shifted everything a little bit to make it so I could taste this wine with you guys today. Awesome. So you'll first of all notice the wine is incredibly clear. It is, not only of brilliant clarity, but as we swirl it around, it almost has like a silverish platinum edge, which, a lot of sommeliers like to talk about the edge of a wine showing sort of a metallic color. We always look against a white background when we observe a wine to see not only the brilliance and the clarity of the wine, to make sure there's no turbidity or cloudiness. Most all commercial wines, in my estimation, should have a clear to brilliant hue. If the wine is cloudy, there are, of course, some natural winemakers that prefer to make a kind of a slightly hazier wine. I don't mind that. I actually find that the haze in a wine is going to be manoprotein anyways, mostly. And manoprotein is what happens to yeast when it dies in fermentation. When yeast dies, it basically breaks down into these little manoprotein molecules, and it goes to the bottom of the barrel to form a layer of what we call lees, L-E-E-S. And lees are really kind of like, they almost look like a really light kind of peanut butter. They're a little slimy. They're a little gritty at the same time. And the red wine lees were the first stage makeup in the history of the world in the 2nd and 3rd century BCE, starting around the time of Aristophanes, who was a great poet in the golden age of Athenian drama. His actors around his time and after would use red wine lees as stage makeup. So red wine lees not only do they feed complexity. Now, when you have a wine that is on that sediment feeds the wine flavor. And if you strip a wine too much, if you run a wine and you filter it and filter it and filter it until just to get it clean, here's the issue. You want the wine to be clear. You want there to be a brilliant hue to the wine. But at the same time, you don't want to strip the flavor out of the wine. But to get a wine to brilliant, you have to use a filtration technique that is generally going to be pretty harsh on the wine unless you start going with the cross-flow filtration. And the cross-flow filtration, the easiest, very overly simplified way of explaining it is it shoots the wine at itself. And basically the wine hits itself, and whatever particulate matter is within the wine knocks the other particulate matter out of the other stream of the wine. And then it is pulled into basically what's the easiest way to say it? It's almost like it's basically like it looks a little bit like a filter, but it is not necessarily a filter. It's just how the cross-flow filtration, which is a very expensive machine, pulls the small amounts of particulate matter that are being stripped out of the wine. And then basically you don't have to run it through paper filters. You don't have to run it through too much. It ends up being incredibly clean and incredibly expressive. And that's what I love about it. Now, this was just bottled a month ago. It is actually, if we were out of Pinot Blanc, would I release this wine today? Let's see. Yeah, the Axis Mundi Grenache Blanc was only cloudy when it was extra chilled, and that was a stability issue. But we won't necessarily talk about that. We're talking about Pinot Blanc now. But when Jolie says something, I'll cheat for her. Now, 99 out of 100 people, when they smell this wine, all they would smell is beautiful saline, lemon, lime, bubbling through chalk, quince, maybe some white flowers. It's really, really intense with sort of stone fruit, minerality, and sort of maybe either apple or lime blossom. It's got this really, really incredibly gorgeous nose. Now, I happen to be very sensitive to sulfur dioxide, to SO2, and we add a little bit of SO2 to all wines to finish them, as wines have been finished since, basically the Egyptian and ancient Egypt and ancient Rome. They found that when they took wet amphorae, and if they didn't break the amphorae, they were going to reuse the amphorae, they would rinse them. But the problem was if they put the wine in wet, they would have microbial issues with the wine. So what they found is at that time, it was incredibly popular and normal to clean your house by burning sulfur in it. Because burning sulfur, aromas and the smoke from burning sulfur will get basically is incredibly antimicrobial. It'll get rid of the bugs, it'll get rid of the rats, it'll get rid of the mice. Everything will just go running away when you burn sulfur in your house, and then you open the windows. It was kind of like putting those little bug foggers in your house, but it was just burning sulfur. Ancient cultures had elemental sulfur and they used it to their advantage. So as a result, what they found out, I'm waiting to see if someone walks away from my door like they normally do. I'm going to take 1 second and make sure that's not an emergency. I think someone sent me booze. Thank you for whoever. There's a box on my front doorstep that looks just the right size for either a bombers of beer or some wine. So I'm looking really forward to that. Jason Drew. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to look at who's coming in right in the middle of the presentation. But when I see Jason Drew, if you haven't had the Drew family wines, I believe you're still up in Mendocino. Congratulations on the brand. I see it wherever I go. So congratulations. That's awesome. We're talking about Pinot Blanc, and I'd love to know where you're from and what you're drinking. Welcome to Day Drinking. So this wine, 2019 Pinot Blanc, 100% Santa Maria Valley, 100% Biendecido. These are 48-year-old own-rooted Pinot Blanc vines. Think about that. These vines are almost as old as I am, 3 years younger than I am. These vines were planted in 1973 on their own roots. And wow, I mean, if you could actually think about how amazing that is, it might be the oldest own-rooted Pinot Blanc in the New World. I can't imagine that there would be older Pinot Blanc than own-rooted 1973. Now, what does own-rooted mean? Well, most grapevines, about 95% of the world's vineyards died in the late 19th and early 20th century from a massive scourge called phylloxera. And the phylloxera are these flying insects that were basically native to the east coast of the United States. And they basically swarm. They have a life above the ground where they lay eggs in the leaves. And then they have a life, below ground where they basically attack the roots of the vines and basically disable the roots ability and the vine's ability to live, and vines slowly die by phylloxera. Now, you can put rootstock on your vine that'll protect the roots. The interesting thing is the flying phylloxera bug never really made it to Europe. The ones in Europe are basically earthbound. They don't really fly, but they move from vineyard to vineyard, but they just don't spend a lot of time above ground. So in the 1890s to about the 1910, 1915, you basically had almost every single European vineyard decimated by phylloxera. So basically the entire world started using grapevines from anywhere from Minnesota all the way down to Texas, Vitis riparia, Vitis Berlanderi, to create these rootstocks from American vines. Because the anecdotal story, of course, is that there was an American viticulturist in France who kind of figured this all out. And while everyone else was doing all this weird sympathetic magic crap, burying toads, in the root system of their vines, because the toads would poison the insects, or there would be some impact on the insects, or flooding their vineyards, thinking the floods would help the vineyards. Turns out that the key was published in Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. That the idea that was really going around in the intellectual circles at that point is that, basically natural selection was real and it happened. And this guy who was watching his neighbors, bury, poisonous toads in their vineyard, had his little Archimedes moment, had his aha moment, which was, oh my gosh, if Darwin's right, we just need to go to the United States. If we go to the US and get their grapevines, those grapevines will have adapted for millions and hundreds of millions of years with the American subspecies of vitis, of grapevines. And if those grapevines will graft on, so we'll have American roots and a European scion or a European vine. So the European vine will produce Pinot Noir or Sauvignon Blanc or Merlot, and then the roots of the vines will protect against those nasty little soil-borne bugs that were basically born in the United States, and the European vines never had a chance because they never developed immunity. Maybe in this situation, you can understand how immunity works a little bit better than you did about a month ago. So what ends up happening is, of course, that now Chateau Lafite, Mouton, all the Lalas, all of the Rhone Valley, Condrieu, Hermitage, Côte-Rôtie, Burgundy, from Marsanne to Meursault, is all planted on American rootstock. So, not only did we go over there and help them in WW2, we actually stepped up and gave them all that they needed even before WW1 to get that wine, to get the wine industry rolling again, which was incredibly important. So back to the Pinot Blanc. So the Pinot Blanc in my glass, 47 years in the ground, 47-year-old vines on their own roots. And oops, we found out a while ago that there were some Melon de Bourgogne vines out there. So the Melon was probably mistakenly interplanted with the Pinot Blanc at Biennacito in 1973. So we have 47-year-old own-rooted Pinot Blanc mistakenly interplanted with somewhere between 7 and 12% Melon de Bourgogne, or just Melon, which makes the Muscadet wine. So Muscadet is a place, it's like Burgundy's a place, Melon de Bourgogne's the grape, Pinot Blanc is basically very, very close to that grape. And then we have Gamay Blanc, which is kind of right in between. So this is a crisp, bright, aromatic white wine that was made in stainless steel at cold temperatures, long cold fermentation, has amazing aromatics. I mentioned the thing that kept coming back to me when I was trying to make my notes on this wine was the aroma of lemon lime soda bubbling up through chalk. And that's just how amazingly aromatic and how amazingly mineral this wine is. Probably a little chalky, a little minerally, a little saline. And then I always explain when the saline character and the minerality gets really dense. One of my favorite descriptions is an aroma I remember from childhood, which was basically going, basically up in Yosemite, climbing the big granite rocks, Half Dome and such, on a pretty warm day. And then the rain, just a summer storm coming through Yosemite, and the rain hitting hot granite, like summer rain on hot granite is, I think, a much better description than, I get a little minerality in this wine, because I have no idea. Where does minerality come from wine? Well, there's a lot of talk about it. I have my own personal theory. Big surprise. By the way, day drinking, drink. That's in a good place. Minerality probably, as best we know, has two sort of precursors. The first precursor is there has to be low pH, high acidity. Have you ever tasted a mineral wine that didn't have some acidity? The big belief is you have to have, for the mineral character to really be perceived by the palate, you have to have a wine with some acidity. So Chardonnay can be quite mineral. Malone, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Grigio, sometimes especially a true Viognier from Condrieu will definitely, as it ages. Most white wines show some more minerality once they lose a little baby fat. I think the minerality comes out. Sauvignon Blanc, Sancerre, Chenin Blanc has can have amazing minerality, especially I'm thinking of Dagenot Silex specifically. If you never had that wine, the man is dead, but you can still find those wines. It would be amazing. Yes. And then as far as, I wanted to read really quick the note I took on this wine this morning. And if you haven't seen it, brand new label, got just so you can see it. And on the back looks a little same, nice and clean. And we've taken all All the AVAs to the same color, just a nice white, clean label. And what I wrote this morning, it's really short. Aromatics, bright, expressive, cold climate, Pinot Blanc aromas, lemon lime soda bubbling through chalk, apple blossom, lime zest, green pear, and peach flesh. Now, is it wordy? I don't think so. I try to keep my descriptions, just maybe a sentence for aromatics and mouth, and then what I would pair it with. In the palate, I said it was broad and lively, with mouth-watering structure and amazing mineral presence and length. Style continues its movement to an Alsatian style, bone dry with amazing and delicious fruit and mineral flavor throughout. And then what do I match with it? Cold water seafood and anything fried. Fish and chips, raw or charbroiled oysters. So sad when you have to charbroil an oyster. I feel sorry for the oysters. Scallops, sourdough grilled cheese, Asian food, even a touch spicy. I'm thinking a perfect match would be Korean barbecue and a side of good kimchi. Kimchi actually matches beautifully with Pinot Blanc. If you like kimchi, I happen to have eaten enough kimchi in my life that it actually tastes like I'm doing something good for my body, and I actually do enjoy eating it. Not a bowl of it, but definitely a little bit on the side to give me, again, yet another beautiful fermented food that's going to help me be healthy. It's absolutely wonderful. So the 2019 Pinot Blanc, I get so excited when a new Pinot Blanc comes out. I think the 2018 is a beautiful style. It's done really well out in the market. But it was a little bit confused because we had to buy some wine back from Jed Steele and blend it with the wines that we made in the cellar. And to a certain extent, I felt stylistically it was not exactly indicative of where we had been taking the wine. I think 19 gets us exactly right back to where I want our Pinot Blanc program to be. Not only representing one winemaker, a winemaking team, one vineyard, all this stuff. In the world of J. Wilkes, this is the most sort of singular wine we make because we try to make that idea of wines of character, wines of place. These are going to be wines that represent an AVA, but not a site. This one is a little bit more site specific. Fortunately, that site is the most vineyard designated property on the planet Earth. And aren't we lucky to be making Pinot Blanc from these amazing old vines? Alcohol 12.9, pH 3.3, titratable acidity about 7 grams per liter. Does that mean it has a hell of a lot of acid? No, it means it has a fair amount of acid for a wine, a great amount of acid for a white wine. But in the Pinot Blanc world, the Alsatian style would probably be down around 3.2 and 8.5, 9 grams of acid. So this wine is going to appeal more. I think the Alsatian palate would really appreciate this because it has a lot of character, a lot of flavor. And really, minerality is a lot like acidity in the sense it structures the wine. So you get the minerals, you get the acidity, it cleanses your palate. It's definitely going to be a wet nap for the palate. Love this wine, the idea with barbecue, with all these wonderful things. You know me, I love to put Pinot Blanc with anything that has smoke on it because the wine has no oak whatsoever. Cold fermented, stainless steel, zero malolactic, 2019 Pinot Blanc from J. Wilkes. Awesome. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit about, first of all, I'm going to welcome everyone who came in while I was talking, talk a little bit. If you guys have any questions, please let me know if you have any questions about Pinot Blanc or the production of Pinot Blanc, anything about what I said. You can always throw that in. Let me know. Let me know if you have any questions, if you have any content you want me to go over or talk about. And I will do everything I can to give you the information that you need. All right. So we have a couple Beths in the house, and Jennifer Mackey came in, and Ari came in. Hello, Ari. 18 Friulano. I would guess that is a wine from the Friuli, which of course would be kind of in the same region where Pinot Blanc belongs originally. Yes, after I talked all that smack about cloudy wine, Jolie reminded me I made a cloudy wine in my Grenache Blanc. Fortunately, that wine got Best of Show white Rhone blend at LA International. I guess they didn't notice the the cloudiness or they didn't chill it. Really interesting. That wine was perfectly clean and clear until you left it in the fridge for 2 days, and then it got a little haze to it. But damn, I really enjoyed that wine. I've got 1 bottle left, trying to decide when it. Difference in flavor profile between 18 and 19? That's a good question, John. I would say that the 18 definitely has a little bit more richness in the mid palate. 19 goes back to that lean, mean, elegant, restrained style. I prefer stylistically that leanness of the 19, although I thought the 18 was a really interesting reflection of the vineyard that took me out of my own comfort level because it came in through someone else who was actually helped make the wine, and we bought some back and blended it in. So it was a little surprising to taste a wine from a vineyard source that I'd been making for 5 years and then tasting someone else's and then blending the two together and trying to do the best we possibly could. I think 18 turned out to be this kind of a gestalt wine. I thought the combination of the wine we made and the wine that Jed made really made a beautiful wine. And I hope you agree that the 18 is a beautiful Pinot Blanc. To be honest, though, I love the fact that we are 100% responsible for this wine and 100% responsible to follow and find that that sort of stylistic affectation might be the wrong word, but the idea that this is the wine that we're making. And we're right back on that idea that this is the wine that we want to make, and that Pinot Blanc doesn't need barrels, doesn't need malolactic fermentation, can be picked early enough to make a wine under 13%. So it's a great aromatic wine that can also be used a little bit, anything under 13%, it can handle a little spice. It can handle maybe even a second bottle with dinner, depending on how many people are around. But it'll definitely be one of those wines that won't weigh you down as a result after a glass, thinking it'd be very difficult to have any more. All right, so I'm going to look for some questions if anybody has some. Welcome a couple people, and then we're going to jump right into the production of white wine. I want to tell you guys basically exactly how I make white wine, how the industry standard makes white wine, and the difference of how I made white wine at Clos Pepe as opposed to the way that I make white wine at J. Wilkes, which is absolutely and very much very different. Monday mocktails. That's perfectly appropriate, Jennifer. Glad that you're here drinking mocktails with us. We love everybody who comes in, drinking or not. Yes, kimchi is very good. Would a Pinot Blanc wine do well in the Santa Rita Hills? Oh, yeah. The problem is, the greatest Pinot Blanc, a lot of the wonderful Pinot Blancs, you can buy a Pinot Blanc from Trimbach for $20. So if you can get, straight out of Rufok, why would you want to go straight out of Lompoc? To me, the Gruner Veltliner coming out of Kathy Joseph's Fiddlesticks vineyard is actually, and her vineyard closer to Lompoc, shows that aromatic white wines are, if I had more money than sense, if someone gave me $25 million after I made my ultimate, property and got a disc golf course installed, I would find a perfect place, maybe even just west of Lompoc, outside of the AVA. And I would plant a vineyard to do aromatic whites and maybe some sparkling wine. I would not hire a geologist or write an AVA petition to include my new vineyard west of the AVA into the AVA. I would prove to the world that my little vineyard was completely and totally badass without having to steal the reputation of a bunch of other winemakers in the Santa Rita Hills. You might know what I'm actually referring to, but I think Gruner, I think Riesling, Gewürztraminer, certainly Pinot Blanc, and maybe even Pinot Grigio would do incredibly well there. Absolutely. Martin, families from Alsace. Wow. Yeah, the time Oh, Kevin, how did you know what I was talking about? All I say is nice things. Remember, I was probably the only winemaker in the Santa Rita Hills that when the Santa Rita Hills was expanded, I called he who should not be named and congratulated him on being a member of the community, and told the person that expanded the Santa Rita Hills AVA, now that the fight was over, let's get back to what wine's about, which is friendliness, farmers, good friends getting to table and coming together and not being contentious and doing whatever we can together to promote. Because, when I was young in the Santa Rita Hills, I carried water. I wrote the damn petition. I did $150,000 of research and writing for the AVA to help create something, not to co-opt it. So that's very important. And I love Alsace. I think, not only is Alsace where foie gras came from, not only do you have Colmar, which is one of my favorite cities. You've got all the sauerkraut and the charcuterie garnie and sausages and white wine, and just, it's so cool because they don't really make a lot of red wine in Alsace, so they just drink white wine with everything, and their cuisine shows it, like pan-fried frog's legs with a parsley cream sauce. Damn perfect with Alsatian wine. Now, like most white wine producing regions, you'll end up getting something funky, like they'll find one little hillside that has a little extra sun, southwest facing hill or southeast facing hillside, southwest facing hillside, that'll absorb a little bit more sun. So what they'll end up doing is planting a little bit of Pinot Noir, and that's exactly what they do in a little village called Turkheim, which is right in Alsace and produces a pretty good red wine. Okay, now I've lost Facebook again. I'm having some fairly serious, okay. Give me a sec, and I will get this going again. And remember, I am without a net. And Chanda's off watching her TV shows. So tonight I'm without a producer, but we're doing well. So welcome back, Wes Hagen Day Drinking. It's 4/20/20. We're tasting some 2019 Pinot Blanc, and we're going to talk about the production of white wine. All right, so I'm going to just check one quick last time, make sure we're caught up. Yeah, no, I love John mentioned, I love more acidity. I love super, super high acid. If I had my way, I would make a Pinot Blanc that would strip the cheek lining off a white Zin drinker in 10 seconds or less. We find that about 7.5 grams at about 3.3 pH is the level where the wine is received not only by critics, but also by the general public as being about kind of the sweet spot for where we want these wines to be. So that's kind of exactly where we are. So you got it. Awesome. If you do that outside of Lompoc, pitch a tent and act as a vineyard security. Oh, nice. Josh, you're in. Again, I have to win the lottery first. Oh my gosh, Alsace? Yes. And when should you go to Alsace? I would recommend you going in the dead of winter. Number one, Auberge d'Ile, which is a star Michelin restaurant near Colmar, is open. Number two, most winemakers, you want to go maybe end of February. So the winemakers are coming back from vacation. And then what you realize is make as many appointments as you can because all of the winemakers there are so used to not seeing anybody during that period that when you show up, you're like a rock star. It's like, wow, you guys have come to Alsace in a completely sort of off time. So, and if you've never seen snow in the vineyards and snow on the castles, snow on the ruins, snow on the road through Alsace and through all the beautiful concrete crosses that kind of run through that whole time. I've only been to Alsace once, and it was during winter, and it was a perfect trip because we didn't have to fight. We didn't have to fight crowds. It was absolutely wonderful. And Ross, so welcome. If you don't know Ross Rankin, Imagine Wines. Thank you for coming out and checking us out. Now let's talk a little bit about the production of white wine. And Dawn, good to see you. Sorry, I think we crapped out on the Wes Hagen Facebook, so I checked it. And you can always head on over to the J. Wilkes Santa Barbara Facebook page. Okay, so let's talk about the production of white wine. So here I am. It is August. I'm growing Chardonnay at Clos Pepe. The fruit's 22 bricks. The pH is 3.0. It's got 10 grams of acid. It is absolutely perfect for sparkling wine. But we're not making sparkling wine today. We're making still wine. So where do we want to see the sugar for basically to trigger harvest? Well, it depends. Is there rain coming? Is there a heat spike coming? Is there some hail coming? Do I have a crew?
Are my winemakers stacking up picking days? So I have to choose a picking day. There's a lot of different situations that go into it. Weather situation, labor situation, what's happening at the winery. Do I have the barrels clean and ready to rock? Have I already bottled last year, so I have barrels to start making wine? All this really holds in. Now, when I was making Chardonnay at Clos Pepe, which I also made a little bit of Mourvèdre Rosé, and I made a little bit of Grenache Blanc. But let's leave those out for a little second, talk about Chardonnay in the Santa Rita Hills. I made 2 Chardonnays at Clos Pepe. I made the Hommage to Chablis, which was a stainless steel Chardonnay, and then I made a barrel fermented Chardonnay, which was a neutral French oak Chardonnay that used no new oak, only older French oak barrels. So I would say the barrel fermented or BF Chardonnay at Wilkes, or excuse me, at Clos Pepe. So many years that I've been learning not to say Clos Pepe. The barrel fermented was more of a Merceau style, under oaked, but with a little bit of a caramel and sort of richness to it. 100% mallow, as were both of the wines. So in general, though, when I I brought the fruit in exactly the same. Like I would not really worry about necessarily. I wouldn't put like the earlier picks in stainless steel and the later picks in oak. I would kind of mix it up, and however much Chardonnay I brought in, because we had a pretty small press, we could only fit 2 bins of Chardonnay in there. So we would pick the Chardonnay, and that just means having a crew of maybe 12 to 15 people, 2 or 3 people riding the tractor. So when the buckets of fruit were poured into the 1,000-pound picking bins in the back of the tractor, there were 2 or 3 people doing nothing but looking into that bin and pulling out leaves, pulling out spiders, pulling out burritos, pulling out, clippers, whatever is thrown into the bin that is what we call MOG, material other than grapes. It's removed. So when the fruit comes to, a lot of winemakers and a lot of wineries put their fruit on they crush it and put it on like basically a vibrating sorting table. So you're picking stuff out grape by grape. I strongly believe that a sorting table oxidizes the juice and the fruit to a level that it has a minimal quality impact on the final wine. I don't believe in sorting tables. I never have, and I'll probably never use them because I don't want to oxidize the juice before. I want the juice and the grapes to stay in a larger sort of. The more grapes and juice that are sticking together, the more stable they are, and the less likely they are to have any oxidative problems. So here we go. So we've got the grapes sorted in the bin, because we had, instead of the sorter sitting there watching the grapes basically come down a conveyor belt, we're basically going through every bucket that goes into the picking bin. We're going through and picking out as much crap as we can. So the fruit is pristine and beautiful. Adam Lee at Siduri Wines, first time he gets Clos Pepe. I sort every single grape that I make at Siduri except Clos Pepe. Clos Pepe fruit is so beautiful in the bin. We just dump it into the crusher to stemmer without sorting it. That's what I'm looking for. That's the quality that I want. Farming, and really beautiful, beautiful farming. So the fruit is beautiful and clean. We dump a bin of cold Chardonnay in the middle of the night. We start picking it at 8 or 9 at night. Probably start bringing the first bins at 11 or 11:30 into the winery. Dump 1 bin into the press. We we close it up, flip it a few times, maybe even give it a tiny little squeeze, open it up, dump the second bin in. It's very full. The last few, bits of fruit, we have to really punch it into the press. We seal the press, which is a big metal cylinder that's perforated stainless steel. So it's got lots of little places where the juice can drip out, with a huge nylon balloon in the middle. So we spin it a few times, spin the cylinder to get the fruit nice and evenly dispersed. And then we basically inflate the inside of the press and press those grapes against that perforated stainless steel, so the juice comes rushing out of the press into the press pan. And then most winemakers would take that juice, put it into a stainless steel tank. That stainless steel tank, you would chill it, and that would separate the clean juice and the sediment, dirt, whatever came in on the grapes, right? I always found personally that if I settled the juice and then just took the pure juice off and fermented it, I would have problems with fermentation. The fermentation would get stinky, it would produce hydrogen sulfide, it would get a little eggy and smelly in the winery. And perfect fermenting Chardonnay should smell like someone's baking an apple pie. Beautiful thing like that. So what I would do is basically take the dirty juice. And when I mean dirty, it's just a little hazy and cloudy, nothing to worry about. Don't panic, it's organic. And then I would take the juice and go straight to barrel, whether a 55-gallon stainless drum, clean and sterile and ready to rock for my homage to Chablis, or the older French oak barrels that I would use otherwise. Here's the deal. Once that juice is in the barrel, you only want to fill the barrel about 2/3 of the way up. So if this was the barrel, I'm only going to fill the barrel about this high, because then my basic recipe at Clopepi, I would add a little bit of yeast nutrient, stir it, and then I would test the fruit, see exactly where the pH and the bricks, the percentage of sugar is. I want to see it in the Clopepi estate stuff high, not even 22s. I want to see 23 to 25 bricks. That's sort of my comfort zone. And the nice thing about Chardonnay, it can take a heat spike and not go through the roof like Pinot Noir does. Pinot Noir, you get a 100-degree day out in Santa Rita Hills, it goes up 2 bricks and suddenly you got 28 bricks, and that makes things rather difficult. So here's exactly what I want to do. I want to take the fruit and the juice, and I'm going to ferment it in the barrel. So we added a little yeast nutrient. This is called Fermade K is the product I use. It adds some vitamin A, some vitamin D, and some extra nitrogen for the fermentation. And then that gives the yeast everything it needs to do to eat, because if the yeast run out of nutrients, and Clopepi was sand, there was almost no nutrients in the fruit. That's why we had to do some fertilizing, some soil building, but we never had very much assimilable nitrogen in the juice. And that's what the yeast feed on. And if the yeast run out of nitrogen, if the yeast run out of nutrients, they start eating each other and cannibalizing. And what happens when yeast cannibalize? They produce hydrogen sulfide, H2S, which smells exactly like basically rotten eggs. Boom. So really want to make sure that when you're making white wine or any wine, that you feed your fermentation just enough that all the nutrients are absorbed and used, but you don't end up with stuff left over. If you put too much yeast nutrient in, your wine might end up having a tiny little bit of aroma and flavor of vitamins. And that's the last thing you want to do. So you take 23 to 25 bricks juice, you put it in a barrel, you add a little nutrient, and then you slowly drip in some prepared yeast that has been warmed up with warm water, maybe a little bit of the juice from the pan, and a little bit of what we call, it's like a yeast rehydration nutrient. So we put a little bit of yeast nutrient in the yeast. We put some nutrient in the juice. We stir it up, and 40 gallons, 45 gallons in a 55-gallon drum or a barrel, and we drip maybe 100 mils of yeasty solution as slow, drop by drop, so it forms this cool, like little kind of like slick right on top of it. And you don't, as Brian Babcock used to say, don't shock the monkey. And what he meant is, don't take a bunch of happy warm yeast and throw it in a cold, tank of 10,000 gallons of cold juice. You want to let the yeast develop its own little culture in an area where it has an opportunity to grow into a large culture of wine. Just so you know how hard these yeast are working, I had mentioned 1 teaspoon of sugar. To turn that teaspoon of sugar into ethanol requires 1 trillion chemical bond changes between the yeast, the disaccharide sugar, and basically the movement of disaccharide sugar to pyruvate, to acetaldehyde, to ethanol. That's really basic, but that's basically how it happens. And then as you come into the winery the next day, then I would put like some screen on the top of the bunghole. Yes, if you're a winemaker, you know that you're a real winemaker when you stop laughing, when you say, go put your nose in that bunghole and tell me what you smell. You end up putting a little screen over it. Then we put some basically Gorilla Tape over it so that flies can't get in, but it has the opportunity to off gas. Because if I put a bung in that thing, I've seen bungs actually shoot out of barrels so hard that they'll actually break a light 30 feet high in the winery. So you don't want to pressurize. You want to let the gas go off. Also, allowing the gas to go off during a fermentation will also give you a cleaner fermentation, because a lot of fermentations will get a little stinky, but as long as the stink has someplace to go, it will generally get out of there. In white wine, that's basically the Chardonnay idea. You basically come in the next day to the winery, you hope you start smelling that fermenting apple pie aroma, and you put your ear down next to the bunghole, and you can start hearing like a kind of like snap, crackle, pop, and you know that that's a good thing. Or you could even put a flashlight and take a look down into the bunghole and see that the wine is alive. It's alive and it's working. So that's barrel fermentation. So you allow the wine to ferment in the barrel. And then at the very end of fermentation, I would taste it until I taste bone dry. It is dry, but the wine still is cloudy, a little like grapefruit juice. I'm going to pull all of that clean wine off the heavy sediment that's settled on the bottom of the barrel. I'm going to dump that sediment out down the drain. And then I'm going to wash the barrel, and then I'm going to fill all the barrels up, and I'm going to lose about 1 out of 4 barrels or 1 out of 5 barrels because those barrels basically were only filled 4/5 of the way. So, if I have 20 barrels in the winery, I'm going to end up maybe with 15 or 16 full barrels, and that's just how it rolls. Then we should talk a little bit about aromatic white and stainless ferment. So I would allow the wine to stay in those barrels. I would stir the barrel every 2 weeks to basically stir the fine sediment into the wine to feed the wine flavor and complexity. It helps the wine get a little bit more rich, shows a little bit more nutty character. I might show even a little bit more minerality in the wine. I would do that both in stainless steel and in the oak barrels. And that's exactly the way we roll. Now, I never really made a white wine in tank before I went to J. Wilkes, but let's talk a little bit about the difference in how we would ferment the J. Wilkes Pinot Blanc. A little bit different, a much more sort of commercial and production. So the way we make Pinot Blanc, we might be making 2,500 cases of Pinot Blanc, which would be the equivalent of 100 barrels. So, that's going to be somewhere in, upwards of almost 5,000. It could be 5,000 gallons. You don't want to use little 55-gallon barrels and have to have 100 of them. So you're going to put it in something I never had at Clos Pepe, a beautiful big stainless steel tank with temperature control, and basically all these different ability to test the wine or to remove the wine during fermentation, test it, see the temperature, see everything. So we would bring the Pinot Blanc grapes in, we would press them, take the dirty juice, and instead of fermenting the dirty juice, we put it in a tank, chill it down to about 40, 45 degrees. When you chill a tank of juice, basically all of it basically racks out cleaner. Originally with the dirty juice, we would ferment it dirty to make the Clos Pepe Chardonnay. We would never settle it. So the juice was never settled. It was fermented with all of the interesting things that came in out of the vineyard, dirt, this, that, and the other thing. But we would rack it at the end of fermentation to get that stuff out. But I found that the dirty juice fermented cleaner than clean juice. Whatever was in a little bit of the haze that was in the juice was making the fermentation smell better before, during, and after fermentation. Now, that's not a commercially acceptable way of making wine. That's a great way of making 100 cases of stainless steel Chardonnay to release to a very small amount of people. But really, to be safe, most aromatic white wines like Pinot Blanc are made in a very large tank at very incredibly controlled temperature. So what we would do is we would chill the juice, settle it, basically rack the clean juice with a racking valve. So there's a valve in the tank that's a little higher than the bottom valve. Bottom valve would just evacuate all the crap. The racking valve is where the clean wine comes out on top of the lees. Then we would look down the tank, take the last little bit of clean wine off the top, clean juice off the top. So now we started with 5,000 gallons of clean juice. Now we've got 4,900 gallons or dirty juice. Now we got 4,900 gallons of really, really clean juice. We're not going to filter the juice. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to take that beautiful, perfect, wonderful juice, and we are going to inoculate it with a yeast that we call QA32, QA23 exactly. QA23, it's I believe it's a Alsatian isolate that basically, so we're using a yeast that has been isolated from Alsace to ferment this beautiful wine. And it really, the thing about QA23 is it really, really shows this incredibly gorgeous stone fruit, bright floral character. So that's exactly what we're going to try to do. So once we know the ferment is going, we're going to chill that juice even down further. So maybe to get the ferment going, we may do like 60, 65 degrees to make sure that the yeast isn't shocked the way that I explained it. But once the fermentation is active, we know the yeast are not going to quit. So we're going to chill down that juice significantly. Why do we want to ferment cold? Basically for the same reason that you lager a beer. You're going to make a longer, colder ferment because everyone knows the colder it is, the less biological activities outside. If it's minus 20 outside, and Marcus Hansen, I'm looking at you in Minnesota as things finally begin to thaw up there. You're not going to see a lot of bugs out, when it's minus 20, but when it's 75, 80 degrees, we just had our first warm day and all the moths just came out and started laying their eggs in all the dormant trees. So when the trees wake up and the moths come out, they all have young succulent shoots to chew on. And that's exactly what we want to do with that. We want to start it a little bit warmer to make sure that the yeast has the capacity to really do everything it wants to do. And then we're going to chill it down to slow down the yeast almost to a standstill. And instead of the wine fermenting to dryness in 7 days, which it would at 70 degrees, we chill it down to like 45 degrees and ferment it over months. So it goes so slow. And as a matter of cold, slow fermentation, the belief is that's going to maintain better aromatic complexity and a brighter, more floral and brighter aromatics to the wine. So barrel fermentation done to integrate the flavors of the oak, to integrate the flavors of the wine, to bring all of that stuff together, and to make generally a wine. It's very difficult to stop malolactic. So what's malolactic? Well, white wine, every red wine except Nouveau Beaujolais goes through 100% malolactic fermentation. So Pinot Noir, Cabernet, Merlot, Tempranillo, everything. It's 100% malolactic. It takes the malolactic bacteria, which is Enonostoc enos. This is a bacteria that when you integrate it into the wine or you put it into a barrel that's had it in it before, because you cannot get Enonostoc out of a barrel. Once you've had malolactic happen in a barrel, you're going to get malolactic in that barrel probably for the rest of your life. So what you want to do, maybe we add a little mallow into a tank or add a little mallow to the barrel to make sure we're focused and we're using the malolactic isolate that best makes the wine that we're used to making. There's the two famous ones are alpha and beta. Make sure that we put some malolactic into the wine, and then the malolactic bacteria starts eating the appley malic acid, which tastes like an apple, like the acid in a nice green apple, and it actually consumes it and respires. That's a nice way of putting it. Lactic acid, which not only is in our muscles when we're exercising, but lactic acid is the structure in milk, cream, cheese, that tang, that grip, that's lactic acid. So the way it was explained to me by Brian Babcock is malolactic gives the wine a seamless character. Wines that are not malolactic, Pinot Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, Muscadet, some Chenin Blancs, those wines have that crisp brightness, but maybe not the depth and complexity that a full Malo Chardonnay will have. Certainly, you do not need malolactic fermentation to show minerals. Obviously, this Pinot Blanc that I'm might as well put a nipple on because I'm nursing it so slow. It's one reason why we're a little bit careful with the acidity in this wine, is that we really, really want the mineral and the acidity not to be too much for most drinkers. I'm drinking this wine pretty much straight up room temperature, and it shows beautiful acidity. The colder the wine, the more acidity you're going to taste. The warmer the wine, the less acidity you're going to taste. The warmer the wine, every little part of the aromatics of the wine is going to show very strongly. The colder the wine, the aromatics are going to be a little shy. I also said that I would mention to you what a mute is. So mute, or mute, M-U-T-E in French, is a way to make sure that you get exactly the amount of residual sugar that you want left in the wine after you ferment it with a yeast strain like QA32. QA32 is not going to stop until the wine is bone dry. If you're asking that yeast to successfully finish fermentation at 45 degrees, that's sort of like, asking someone to, jump in Lake Minnetonka in February. It's going to be a shock to the system. So what we really want to do, we want to let the yeast do its job and just let the wine go bone dry. So we're not sitting there thinking, okay, the wine is at 2 grams of residual sugar, which is just exactly the amount of residual sugar we want. That's 0.2% residual. half of what is normally perceptible by a human being, then why don't we care? Just that 2 grams gives the wine a little bit of breadth in the mouth and actually gives the aromatics in the fruit a little lift in the nose. So a little bit of residual sugar does amazing things to a wine's aromatics. And generally, if you taste a truly bone dry wine, you'd be surprised just how much structure and grip is in it. So most commercial wines have that. Now, how do we get 2 grams back in the wine? Do we just sprinkle, some C&H? Do we just throw in some white sugar, some brown sugar? No. So, at Clos Pepe, I'm not saying that I had to add sugar to a couple of ferments, but if I said I hadn't, I'd probably be lying. So again, I try to be as honest as I can with you guys without a net, and I want you guys to know everything that I know. So here's the deal. You use a moutet, and a moutet works like this. You take some juice of every grape that you make. You take a little bit of raw juice from every wine you make. So before you start fermenting your Pinot, you might take some of the macerated juice off of the skins. And then we have a very, very small little filter, and we filter that juice, and we basically make a big solid ice cube out of it. So we might take a bucket, a bucket of everything we make, or a couple buckets of everything we make, and keep it absolutely unfermented, filtered, and frozen. And then we use that juice as a moutet. And that moutet is going to basically be the way that we back sweeten the wine to perfection. So we're not sprinkling sugar in the wine. We are actually using the juice of unfermented grape juice to slightly sweeten the wine, which really gives the wine a much higher quality flavor of how that sweetness is perceived. Cool. So that's a little bit about white wine, aromatic white wine. Bring the grapes in nice and cold, press them off, take the juice, put it in a tank. You're going to probably basically wait until the juice settles. You're going to get rid of sort of the lees. You're going to keep the clean juice. You're going to ferment the clean juice after you probably add a little bit of yeast nutrient and yeast. It may only take 10 days to ferment in a warmer tank. It could take 3 months on a really, really cold tank, depending on the yeast and what you're making. And then, of course, for a barrel fermented wine such as Chardonnay, some people do this with Viognier. A lot of different grapes are used in a barrel fermentation, Pinot Blanc. You're going to basically take the juice, either put it in a tank, let it settle, ferment the clean juice, or be a crazy sort of artistic idiot like me and basically ferment the juice raw and dirty, because I wanted it to be more Clos Pepe than any other wine. And I thought what made it more Clos Pepe and kept the fermentation cleaner was to use that slightly dirty juice. Cool. Well, hopefully you learned something about the production of white wine. I know that I kind of jump at this stuff again without notes and without a net. So I'm going to go through. If you have any, I see some questions, so I'm going to go back and say that. Awesome. Again, absolutely, Alsace is worth the trip. Do not miss it. It's definitely someplace if you like high acid, high intensity white wine. It's unbelievable. Yes, Ari, I say we should all go. And Mark Reek, welcome. You're never forgotten, my friend. Strasbourg, Petit France. Yeah, and basically do not call Alsatian people French or German. Ever since the Napoleonic Wars and the war, basically 1812, France and Germany have basically passed Alsace back and forth in a way that's not exactly fair to the Alsatians. So Alsatian people are Alsatian. They speak French and German, which is great because I speak German and my French is pretty terrible. So I got to go there and actually go to the post office and speak French or speak some German and got away with it. So that was kind of fun. What do you do with your wine if it gets stinky while it's aging? I'd say aerate it. So there's basically different things that make wine stink. Hydrogen sulfide is really the most basic thing, and that is the exact same thing that makes stinky egg smell. Now, hydrogen sulfide generally is pretty open to aeration. So the first thing that I would do if my wine was stinking during fermentation is I would just punch it down until it stopped stinking. I would mix it and mix it and mix it and aerate it until the air carried away all the H2S and it went back to smelling like blueberry pie if it was a red wine, or maybe like an apple pie if it was a white wine. Stir it, aerate it, And then if you were using if you're in a vineyard or you know that your wine's going to stink every year, you might want to think about using a little prophylactic copper, and that would be copper sulfate at either a 1% or a 10% rate. And if you add a little bit of copper sulfate to your juice before you ferment it, there will be zero, and I mean zero, leftover copper sulfate in the wine after ferment. So here is if I was going to give every winemaker in the world one piece of advice, I'm going to go ahead and jump on this. I would do this. I would say always add anything to a wine as early as you possibly can. If you have to water the juice down, if it's 28 bricks and you don't want a 17, 18% wine, if you can even get it that high in alcohol, do your water and acid add as early as possible. I always say, if you add anything to wine, you are not paying attention as a winemaker. Whatever you add to wine, and I try not to add anything to wine, it should always be done. This is really more of a technical symposia, but you always want to add it as juice. If I add acid to juice, I can't tell that I added a little acid to that juice. If I add a little copper sulfate to that wine, the copper will be absolutely gone when we rack it off, all the leftover copper will be in the lees. If I add a little bit of sulfur dioxide, I want to add it as juice. So by the time the wine is actually fermented, there's no SO2 left, or none in a free form. It's all bound. So that's kind of, without getting too technical and without giving you guys too much information, it's 6 o'clock. So how do you keep the added unfermented juice from fermenting? It's basically going to be run through, the SO2 will be, so by the way, the amount of mute, and my French is awful, in the Chardonnay is 0.2% Chardonnay mute. And we decided, even though we had Pinot Blanc mute, to use the Chardonnay mute, because when we added it and tasted it, we actually liked it better. So there you go. Never used acacia wood. So acacia wood, it's an African tree. If you looked it up on the internet, you'd go, oh, I've seen that in every special I've seen on Africa I've ever seen. Acacia wood is one of the few woods that is used besides oak in the production of wine. I have never, probably better than terebinth, which is what they use in Retsina. I don't know if acacia, I like the idea of putting in an Albarino, because Albarino is kind of a cool, slightly freaky little creature by itself. And Ross, when that wine, I would love, if it's new acacia barrels, I would love to see those barrels. I have never purposefully tasted or know I've tasted a wine aged in acacia wood. So I think that would be really cool. Now, I did read in the 70s, there were some crazy Santa Barbara winemakers that tried to make some oak barrels out of red oak, but I guess the porousness of it and the flavor of it, or whatever, it didn't really make a great wine. So as far as the unfermented juice from fermenting, the amount of residual sugar in that wine, compared to the amount of stability that we did, to add enough SO2 to get 0.8 stability at whatever pH the wine was at, gave us the opportunity to feel very confident that wine was not going to re-ferment. We did give it a couple grams of sugar, but because of, basically a cross-flow filtration, we had removed all of the potential yeast. So we felt pretty confident that we could put a little bit of mute back in. Boom. Next winter, be time to go to Alsace. I love it. Bob's asking about oak and Sauvignon Blanc. There's this huge movement, and some of the local winemakers around here do it, and it does not sit well with Wes, the wine craftsperson, to put oak in aromatic wines. So Sauvignon Blanc, I don't think it should ever have oak. Pinot Blanc, I don't think it should ever have oak. Pinot Grigio, Pinot Gris, not a fan. Viognier, I don't like it with oak. I find that those grapes have a completeness to them that's not necessary to put oak in it. I would say in general, it's very popular to put oak in aromatic wines to try to Chardonnay-ize to make more Chardonnay-like the wines that are not like Chardonnay. So why aren't people drinking Sauvignon Blanc? The marketing department says it doesn't taste like Chardonnay. What can we do to make the Sauvignon Blanc taste like Chardonnay? Put it in some new oak or soak some chips in it, whatever you want to do. I find the flavor profile of unoaked aromatic white wine far more compelling. and far more sort of varietally focused than a wine that's done with oak. Oak is an affectation. Oak is something that if you're not careful, you can take the wine a little bit away from its sense of place. So no, I mean, I am dying to taste some acacia influenced wine. That sounds absolutely fabulous. Yes, Ross, every single one of these talks, if you don't want to go through my Facebook pages and find them, you can find every single one of these I've done posted in two places, two YouTube channels. The first YouTube channel is the J. Wilkes Wines YouTube channel, and the other one is the Miller Family Wine Company YouTube channel. And then there's also a Wes Hagen YouTube channel, but that's all my old Clopepi stuff. So you can easily find every single episode in order on YouTube, and go over there. Yeah, subscribe, like, and put some comments in there, because I do actually. I'm waiting for comments over on YouTube. We're getting pretty amazing sort of views over here on Facebook, but these will be posted in perpetuity. As a historical document of how Wes Hagen drank through the pandemic. I've been doing a fairly poor job of drinking tonight. Let me check one last time to make sure I've answered everybody's questions. Chardonnay eyes. Yes, Chardonnay eyes. Michelle, what can't you do? Michelle Shin, Program Manager of the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of Science. Oh, the Office of Science. Is there anything more beautiful I've ever heard? Yay, Enlightenment values. Yay, science. Have I made a barrel fermented Pinot Blanc sort of in the Burgundian style? Remember, Pinot Blanc was almost 10% of Domaine de la Romanée Conti before 1954. So if you ever taste a bottle of DRC before either 54 or 56, it will have been co-fermented with Pinot Blanc the same way that Côte Rôtie is Syrah co-fermented with Viognier. So I just don't like how barrels over first of all, it's an accent that when it's not needed. I look at oak. I would look at oak as a way of taking of giving the wine a French accent. And if it doesn't need the French accent, Pinot Noir tastes really weird in stainless steel. I love it. Not everyone's going to love it. And people that want a glass of Pinot Noir are going to take a glass of stainless steel Pinot Noir and say, what the hell? So I'm going to say that, I love to put some new oak in Pinot Noir. I love to put some new oak in Syrah. Love to put some new oak in Cabernet. But, Pinot Blanc, Viognier, Sauvignon Blanc, nope, not at all. All right, well, and thank you, Ross Rankin, telling me that a La Cañada High School graduate has this level of knowledge. Clearly, I learned other things at La Cañada than wine, although I was consuming wine at that point, which was really nice. But at the same time, all right. Ryan, of course, I want to, yes, so